So earlier this summer, I got to do an incredible panel with Barbara Hambly, one of my writing idols, and Jay Kristoff and Joe Abercrombie, who are always a blast and are always sure to give me a hard time. Excellent writers. It was a wonderful panel. It was at Spain and Celsius, and you get to watch it here. Though I do want to warn you, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to cut out the time that is spent with the interpretation happening between Spanish and English. So the editing is going to look a little choppy on this, and that's just so that we don't have to do that, and that you can just enjoy the panel without that downtime. So please have fun with the panel.
Opposing characters forced to get along is a brilliant idea. When did you start developing that dynamic, or was it there from the beginning?
So I think it's easy when you've written something that has stuck around and been relatively successful to look back and think, wow, the brilliant ideas I had. People will read your books and say, wow, he meant to do this. And you'll think, oh, did I? And then a year later, you think, yeah, I did. And then a year after that, someone asks you the question, you say, this is what I meant to do. And so there's a kind of mythologizing in your own head of your own plans. So nothing too clever, you know. I set out to write the kind of fantasy I wanted to read. And I think that that was in contrast to some of the very heroic stuff that I'd read over the years. Quite an unheroic style of fantasy. And that meant characters who were quite fractious, quite difficult, who had difficult pasts, who were carrying scars, physical and emotional. And so I think naturally in writing scenes between these people, there was inevitably a kind of a spiky bouncing off each other, a little bit like me and Jay. Just a natural boom boom. He doesn't like people who are taller than him. It upsets him. So I think, you know.
There are no people taller than me, Joe. I found one Spanish man who was taller than me, the only one.
So there was no big plan, but it was natural in just what I chose to write and how I chose to write it, I guess.
You are a rock star and draw so much inspiration from music. What kind of bands do you listen to?
Guess. K-pop. I'm a huge K-pop fan. No. That's a good question. Before I answer, can you guys put your hands together for our amazing MC and our amazing translator? I've been to festivals all over the world and I've never been to a festival like this one. I don't know if you guys understand how lucky you are to have this thing, but it's incredible and it wouldn't happen if not for these guys and the wonderful Christina, who you probably don't even know exists, but she's been working really hard the entire week. So yeah, thank you guys, it's amazing. I am not a K-pop fan. You may not know what to look at. I listen to music when I write, but I can't listen to anything with lyrics. The words tend to get in the way of my words. So I'm often listening to movie scores or orchestral pieces. There's a great YouTube channel called Cryo Chamber, which kind of does dark, atmospheric stuff that doesn't get in the way of the words in my head. But when I'm plotting, I'm listening to music all the time. And often the ideas that is in the lyrics and the music that I'm listening to kind of bleed into the books that I'm writing. And some of my coolest lines are actually stolen and repurposed lyrics from the bands that I like. So you can probably tell the album that I was listening to if you do a deep dive into the text. And I'm often throwing in little crumbs for the people who like the kind of music that I like. There's probably 4 of you in this crowd right now, but a little bit. And yeah, it's a kind of private joke that I have with my readers. But yeah, if I was writing an epic battle piece, for example, I would be listening to some big epic battle music from the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. If I'm listening to something a little more intimate or atmospheric, I'll kind of dial it down. So I need a soundscape for my brain to work, but anything with words gets in the way of my words, so yeah.
How do you feel about having written a modern classic?
I did not intend to write a modern classic. I wanted to write a story about, well, if you tell the editor, I want to write a story about the nature of love, he won't buy it. You say, no, I want to write a story about killing dragons, and then he'll buy it. But I wanted to write a story about how the way people think the world is, because our young hero goes in and he's looking for a hero, and he discovers a person, and he discovers two people, and he's, it's a process of his growing up, his realizing that, oh, the world is different than I thought, and you go out to slay the dragon and you discover the dragon is not the problem. And I just wanted to tell a good story. I had been writing stories about John and Jenny when I was a teenager, and there were many people I would tell stories about in my head, and some of them ended up being in later books that I wrote. And I'd been writing stories about John and Jenny for many, many years, and I finally found a story where I could put them in. But I'm delighted that people like the book. It was a difficult book to write. I remember having to revise it, and it was, I had a very good editor. It was hard to write, but I didn't think, oh, I'm going to sit down and write a classic. I thought, I want to sit down and write a story about these people and the way love can work between people, between creatures, with magic and without magic.
Which radiant order are each of these panelists?
Joe's a void bringer. Obviously. Boy, that's actually kind of a question that I don't think I can answer for anyone else. I can answer a bit for myself, but I can't really answer for others. Main reason being that it's not like the Sorting Hat, where you go in a door and you come out and they've told you what you are. In the Stormlight Archive, there's volition. You're choosing, you're seeking, you're wanting and needing certain things, and it's so personal that, and most people could be in multiple depending on where they are in their life and what they want. So I am most likely a bondsmith if I were in one of the orders. I kind of based that whole order on a little bit about the things that I need and the things that I would make as oaths if I were given the chance. But remember, this is about a partnership and about choice and about where a person wants to take their life. Not necessarily about, I'm going to wave my hand over someone's head and shove them in a certain direction. I don't even, force the characters along those lines. When I'm writing, I generally do a lot of outlining for my plot and my world, and then the characters get to take a sledgehammer to that if they want to. And I think a lot of writers would probably agree with this idea that once you start writing, every outline is going to get tweaked based on who the characters are and who they become as you're writing the story. And so while it's not likely that something as big as what Radiant Order someone would join changes, it's possible even while I'm writing. So my answer is I ask you to maybe think of it a little bit more with choice and volition than me putting someone in any given box.
How much of your writing time is actually spent writing as opposed to brainstorming or just staring at the ceiling?
Well, I don't like work very much, so I generally work until tea time, which isn't that long. I try and keep it to small blocks. You said, I'm quite filmic in the way that I write. I started my working life as a TV editor, working on documentaries and live music, various kinds. I used to edit mostly. A lot of weather porn, as they call it. Who's laughing? Those sort of shows about tornadoes and hurricanes and, where a couple in the Midwest have no idea the fastest winds on Earth are about to descend on their trailer home. I worked on a lot of that stuff. And as an editor, you kind of get a certain sense for how to pace a scene and where to come in and out of a scene, what you can lose, what you need to focus on, where to kind of use dialogue, where to maybe use action and internal dialogue. And so I think a lot of those skills are transferable in a way, a surprising amount of them. And so I think as a writer, I don't really think absolutely visually. I'm not kind of seeing the book or the scene I'm working on as a film, but I think the experience of being an editor is very important, and instinctively I'll do things like start on dialogue, start on a moment. When I first started writing, experimenting before I became an editor, I'd do a thing where I would describe the whole space, and then I'd kind of describe a person within it, and then think about what the person was doing, and then maybe get to the point of dialogue. After being an editor, cut to the chase. And I always have tried to do that ever since, to kind of cut into dialogue, to cut out on action, and to keep things moving along. So definitely, yeah, the film editing experience was very, very important for me.
What is your favorite part of the creative process / book writing process?
I mean, when I'm about to finish the book is my favorite part. My favorite part of the whole process is right at the end, kind of, you've solved all the problems, you've fixed all the big mistakes, and you're kind of putting the icing on the cake, so to speak. My least favorite part is drafting. We were talking about this the other night. I don't hate writing, but sometimes I hate the writing that I have written. Like, this is the coolest job I've ever had, and it's amazing, but some days when you feel like you've had a bad day writing, that kind of affects, I don't know about you guys, but it affects every part of my day. It affects my mood, it affects the way I see the world. It gets to the point where my wife will send me out of the country. Like last year, I spent a month living in Toledo, and I'm from Australia. That's how bad my mood gets when my book isn't working. So yeah, my most favorite part is when all the big problems are solved and you're just making the prose sing as hard as you can, and kind of putting the final layer on it. The least favorite part is everything else. I'm in the process of, I'm working on a new series now. I was working on it today in the hotel room. I'm about 40% through. And I've got to the point now where I know that the book is broken, but if I trust the process and just keep doing what I've done previously, it'll eventually get to a point where the book works and I'm happy with it. But there's still part of my mind that is constantly telling me that this is the book that's not going to work. This is the story that I'm not going to be able to figure out. And that's kind of a constant struggle for me. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I'm always worried that this guy never. I'm always worried that this is the book that's where the wheels are going to fall off. And even though I've done it 18 times now, that's a fear that kind of never ever goes away.
In your career, have you encountered editors whose input would compromise your story? What have you done in those situations to actually be published?
I have worked with some very brilliant editors, particularly at the beginning of my career. I remember when I was early in my career, I was writing The Ladies of Mandrigen, and my editor, I forget what problem he had with the way I ended the book, but he had some kind of problem about how I ended the book, and I told him that I agreed with him. I rewrote the ending so that it sounded like I was doing what he asked, but I actually ended the book the way I was originally going to end the book.
I'm sorry, sure, go ahead.
Other times I know that I need to listen to my editor because sometimes when I'm working on a book, I'm too close to it. And the editor can tell me things like, in this particular scene, your hero comes off as a jerk. And then I need to look at the scene and go, oh yeah, he kind of does. So I need to look at motivation, at the hero's motivation, and say, why is he doing this? How could he do this? So the answer is yes and no. Sometimes I do need to listen to what my editor says. Sometimes I need to tell my editor that I've listened to what he says and then go with my own instincts.
Are you anxious about the remaining workload for the Cosmere? How do you avoid burnout with such a long-term project?
It's an excellent set of questions. Things that a writer who's involved in something as long-term as I am has to seriously consider. I initially plotted 36 books in the Cosmere sequence. 36, 32? That was a while ago. It's changed and grown since then. So there's a bunch of questions in here. I'll try to address each one briefly. Do I get anxious about thinking? No, I'm in this for the long haul, and I sometimes get anxious about the stories I won't be able to write, which are not the mainline stories, the stories that sometimes come to me that I have to abandon. I think that's a normal thing for writers. I think most of us can't finish all the things that we would love to do. And so we have to play idea triage and let the best ideas win. For the Cosmere, what do I do to prevent burnout? In that regard, most of what I'm doing is I do give myself some flex space. This means that after I write a book or a sequence, I let myself do something else. This is why I need a bit of a break from Stormlight, so I can come back to it refreshed after spending some time on the new Mistborn trilogy. And I let myself write little things in between. That's where Isles of the Emberdark came from and things like that. I just stay careful that those don't become the main thing, that they are the refresher I take from the main thing. The giant epic is what I've always wanted to do. The Cosmere exists because that's what I want to be my opus. So you don't have to worry about me burning out on that. No one is forcing me to do that. I'm forcing myself because it's what I want to create. And I've remained passionate about it for 20 years so far, and I'm about halfway. I think there's a pretty good chance I will be able to finish it in the next 20 years, and we will have the full sequence that I had plotted out. So I think we're in good shape. Everything's is working, but ask me again in 20 years.
Has Andrzej Sapkowski been an inspiration to you?
Thank you. So I would like to say no. But I have a quote on the English edition of the first of those Hussine Wars books. So I'm kind of stuck now. If I say I didn't read it, I look like I was lying to curry favour with Sapkowski. But if I say I did read it, it looks like I stole his ideas. So I've been hoisted with my own petard, as Shakespeare would have it. I have read it, yeah. I like Sapkowski a lot, actually. I think it's very different from Western fantasy, the way that he writes, perhaps less now than it was kind of 10 or 20 years ago, because fantasies generally become so much more varied. But at the time that I first kind of encountered him, that focus on Eastern Europe felt kind of very interesting and very fresh. And I think in Western Europe, we tend to think of ourselves as kind of the center of the world, But in the medieval world, Central Europe, Poland, Bohemia, those parts of Europe were vivid and fascinating. Anyone who's played Kingdom Come Deliverance knows this. And so I found that book really quite interesting. It's also sort of in an odd late Middle Ages. It's not what we generally think of as medieval. Lots of fascinating stuff about religion, obviously, and the way he kind of fuses, I suppose, European history, quite detailed European history, with the kind of magical, speculative elements is really fascinating. And he's just got a very raw, sort of heedless way of writing, Sapkowski. You feel like he doesn't give a shit. you know? And I always admire that in a writer, that they're just ploughing their own furrow. So yeah, I like those books quite a lot. And definitely they were, you know, one of a whole tapestry of things I was thinking about. I didn't like rip him off or anything, you know, but I was inspired in the best and most legally allowable way.
How do you filter the influence / avoid copying from other media as you write your own work?
Why are you asking me that question? I don't know if I have an intelligent answer for that. Usually the character for me is the foundation of all the worlds that I built. Every story that I've ever told started with a character, and it usually starts with a visual that sticks in my head. Mia from Nevernight was basically Emily the Strange, aged up and given a broadsword, and that was the visual that started it all. Gabriel, I had a picture of a guy standing at a window in a tower, looking out over a mountain peak, and a red sun was going down behind it. I don't know where those ideas come from. We're all influenced by the media that we consume and the books that we read as kids. I mean, in terms of how you avoid taking something whole cloth and calling it your own, I guess you just avoid taking something whole cloth and calling it your own. But I think it's unavoidable that everyone takes elements of the things that they love, the stories that they fell in love with and that shaped them as kids, and that incorporates into their own stories, you know, where if, depending on what you read, there's really only 7 stories that have ever been told, and we're just telling them over and over and over again. But yeah, in terms of taking characters whole cloth and just filing the serial numbers off and calling them yours, that's a bad idea. Probably don't do that. You'll probably get called out on stage at a festival in Spain for that shit. So.
With everything you've written and all the writers you have inspired, do you feel like you've written a classic in fantasy?
No. When I'm writing it, I'm in the story, I'm there with the people, I'm there hearing what they're saying, and I'm not thinking about, oh, I'll write this so that teenagers will love it. I'll write this so that people of a certain set of beliefs will love it. I write what I'm feeling. I started telling stories because I wanted to be someplace else when there was, when my life was unhappy, when I had difficulties as a child. I wanted to be someplace else. I wanted to go to Oz. I wanted to go to Barsoom. I wanted to go to Middle Earth. And in a way, I'm not thinking about the audience at all. I'm not thinking about the future at all. I'm thinking about, we're right here, right now. I've got a sword and there's the dragon. And I write as well as I can in the moment for that story. And I don't think about who I'm writing it for. I don't think about, I'm delighted when I get a good review, but I don't write for the reviewers. I write for you as my audience, but that's not what I'm thinking about when I'm writing. It's what I'm thinking about sometimes when I'm editing. And I look at the way a character behaves and I think, that's a little nasty, or that's a little, that does not display very much compassion for other people. And then I edit it and I change it so that it's closer to what I think I would like to see. But when I'm in there writing it, it's just me in the story.
Have there been any characters that you had to grow to love after originally hating writing them?
So I think I said in one of my panels earlier that I steal from Robert Jordan his answer when people ask who your favorite character is. I say it's the person I'm writing right now, which I've always thought is really an astute answer, because as an author, you need to love in some way every character you're writing. And you need to be in their head. And now some characters despise themselves, and you will pick up on some of that, and that's certainly part of a character being difficult. But that character has to mean something to you. That's why you're writing them. It was, generally, I've not had that problem when I've been writing my own characters. When I picked up The Wheel of Time, I had spent many, many years in the fandom, and fans, some of you may know, tend to pick sides, right? We argue about who we like and who we don't like, and suddenly I was stepdad to all 2,200 named characters in The Wheel of Time. And I couldn't afford to hate them anymore. And the ones that I'd always disliked, for those who are Wheel of Times fans, Cadsuane, she's not my real mom. Moirane's my real mom. There was this character that I had never really liked. But then I had to write that character. And it put to test that sense that I had, that I have to love every character when I'm writing them. And that one was the struggle. I had to work to like that character. And I came around, even on that character. So I would say this isn't really a problem for me in so much as when I'm in their head, I'm trying to think as much like them as I can. And I'm trying to make sure that they are, if not my favorite, they are at least the protagonist of their own version of the story happening, as long as I'm writing them.
What has the study of psychology brought to your works, and how has it influenced you?
Yeah, I did a psychology degree, so... So I have no education. I made that joke every time. I made that joke the other day. Just the same stuff every time. I guess you're influenced by everything you do, or you study, or you watch, or you read, or you play, and really like or don't. And so I think certainly studying psychology finds its way somewhat into my characters and the way that I write. Probably not as much as you might think. I don't know that studying psychology gives you some kind of great insight into the human condition necessarily. My kind of interest in characters and in strange and unusual characters who think in weird ways, I think partly just comes from reading some fiction where those kind of characters appear and really responding to that type of voice. The one thing I studied in psychology, which I think really did make a big impact on me, was I studied human error. Why ships sink, why nuclear reactors melt down, that kind of thing. That human error is absolutely universal. And you have to design every system knowing that people will fail. Whereas the fantasy I read as a kid often had these kind of heroic characters who gloriously succeed. And they're the story of these 1,000,000-to-1 shots that come off every time. And these people who snatch victory from the jaws of defeat every time. Frodo, the odds were against him. We know that. But he made it, didn't he? He made it to Mount Doom. He kind of failed at the end, but he made it. They did it. That plan came off. I like plans that, a sure thing that then people trip over their own dick and face plant into a mountain, before they reach the best moment. I like things that go wrong. Military history is, as much the story of failure and miscommunication and personality clashes as it is the story of glorious plans coming off. And so I like in my stories to really reflect that. Very fallible people, very occasionally succeeding, but more often than not, making a total mess of things.
What was it like writing your book in Toledo, and will you come back to Spain? Or does that depend on your wife?
My wife is going to be mad at me now because it makes it sound like she kicks me out of the house. She actually doesn't. I sometimes prefer to be alone when the book isn't working. Yeah, I went to Toledo in April last year at the end of the Empire of the Damned tour. I met up with an author friend of mine, C.S. Picat, who was on tour in Spain at that time. And we just rented an apartment in Toledo and we smashed words every day. I would write in the morning, I would go for a walk along the walls at lunchtime, and I would write again in the evening. And it just so happened that I was writing this big epic battle sequence in a medieval walled city, and so I pretty much based the entire sequence on Toledo. I kind of wandered around. I would lob onto the back of tour groups because I was too fucking cheap to pay for them myself. I would just listen to what these tour guides were saying about the city and kind of learned about the entire way the city was built for defense. And a lot of that just kind of bled into the city. So when you guys are reading Empire of the Dawn next year, there's a big battle at a city called San Maximil. Just picture Toledo, it's there. But actually the inspiration that kind of broke the entire back of the book came to me when I was living in Toledo. I was walking out on the walls at lunchtime, like I said, probably about 2 weeks in. And it was quite actually like an idea fell out of the sky and hit me in the head. And I thought about it for a little while as I walked around the walls, and I came back to the apartment and I started writing, and I wrote for the next day and a half because it was a weird idea and it took the book in a direction that I totally wasn't expecting. But after that day and a half, after I'd written it, I realized that it not only worked, it made the entire rest of the book kind of snap into place. It was like I was looking at a jigsaw puzzle and all the pieces just turned to orientate themselves the correct way and just clicked into place. And the rest of that book was like riding a bike downhill. It was the easiest book that I've ever written. And that's all thanks to Toledo. So yeah, I thank the city and the barista at Starbucks in the back of the book. So I was there every day. I'm really lucky to be able to kind of travel around the world and go to these places and soak in the ambience. I'm from Australia. It's only been settled for the last 200 years, so we don't have these big grand structures. We don't have these amazing cities. So yeah, thanks to everyone in Toledo. Yeah, and when you read that battle next year, just picture yourself there and you'll be there. That big twist happens at the end of part 3, by the way, so when you're reading it next year, you have no one to blame but yourself.
What inspired you to write your dragons differently than many of the stories of dragons and knights at the time?
I think I must have, well, in The Hobbit, of course, the dragon is sentient. He talks, he thinks, he has a mind that, you know, he will speak to Bilbo. And so I had been familiar with, you know, that the dragon is not an animal, but it's not human. And that was the kind of dragon that I was basing, that I based Morkaleb on, is that he is sentient, he is intelligent, he's not human, but he is a sentient being, and that is what, that's what John and Jenny were not expecting in Dragonsbane. And the point of the story is that, you know, the title, Dragon's Bane, the thing that damages the dragon, the thing that hurts the dragon. And what hurts the dragon is falling in love with someone, which certainly the dragon never expected. And so he is no longer completely a dragon. He now understands human love. And so love is the dragon's bane. Love is the thing that makes him not be completely the way he was. He was drawn to the city by his addiction to gold, and the experiences that he had broke him out of that, that selfishness of, all I want is your gold so I can listen to my wonderful music. I don't know where I got that. At this distance, this far away, I don't remember whether I heard or read something that got me thinking in those terms, or whether I invented that myself. That was 40 years ago, come on. Your parents were not born then. But I liked him as a character. I liked him as a being. My idea of the dragons, although I never said it, was that they are sentient beings from another planet, from another universe, and they're not of this earth. Their magic is not of this earth. And that was the view of the dragons that I had. They are creatures that live in magic, the way a fish lives in water.
What cultures on Earth have had influence on your books, and has the Spanish culture inspired you?
Have I been inspired by Spanish culture? Yes, most definitely. There are things that are someday I can tell you about. But I can answer the second part of the question. The culture I'm most inspired by in general is probably going to be Korean culture. I do like K-pop. I like metal a lot too, but I'm like a metal normie, right? Like I listen to Metallica.
I like
right?
Metallica. They're great.
I listen to
Yeah,
Sabaton, right? I listen to like I listen to like the normie metal music.
I'll hook you up with the good stuff.
Okay, so I lived in Korea for 2 years. I was a missionary there, and living in another culture changes the way you see the world, and learning another language. And I can point out all kinds of things through my books. In Korea, I was sitting on a subway, and one of my Korean friends is like, "Oh, don't put your leg up so they can see the bottom of your foot. That's culturally insensitive here." And I'm like, "Oh," and then I noticed everybody was sitting with their legs crossed in a way they didn't show the bottom of the feet. And I'm like, the bottom of the foot is taboo. You can trace directly the safe hand to that moment of realizing that other cultures have taboos that are very different from the taboos that I have. The language in Elantris was based off the idea of Korean has this really cool, Hangul is fantastic language, right? Hangul is the name of it. And when Hangul, what they did is, back in like the 1300s, everyone had to write in Chinese because Chinese was the writing system of the area. And the King Sejong was like, I want to teach my people, they can't be literate because Chinese is too hard for farmers to learn. So he devised Hangul, where you write in Hangul Chinese characters that are phonetic. And that's what Hangul is. It's phoneticizing Chinese characters so that they can write them, and then they could actually add in the Korean parts of the language that you couldn't write in Chinese with the Hangul. And the system in Aeonic, the Aeons are like the Chinese characters, and the Aeonic is like the Hangul. And so I could go forever talking about the influences that were on me, just because, living in another culture and my brain having to confront how language and culture influences interactions and the way that people think. It was so useful. So that's the one that's probably you're going to find throughout all of my career going to probably be the most useful. You will find some Spain eventually. I'll talk about it. I don't want to give spoilers.